I got a request for a subject, and I'm going to quick read it, I think. It's basically about how to put things down. You know, when we're engaged in something, how do we put it down? So I want to talk about putting things down, maybe a bit more generally. And I thought I would start by reading from Stillness Flowing about it. Ajahn Chah talking about this, using some of his methods perhaps in our practice. So this was when Ajahn Chah had started forest practice. So he was ordained in a village temple, and the village or city monks practice differently from the forest monks. The forest monks don't use money. The forest monks often live in the forest or travel on what they call tudong in the forest. So Grace is the one who sent me the request, and I was just gonna read it. It's like how to walk away. There's this very skinny window. How to walk away from something half finished. And when that is the wisest course of action, for example, it's hard to put down a project, even though I know a break is extremely necessary. And, you know, it's a common example. I don't know how many of you have had that experience, but it also stretches into other areas of our practice and our training. So this was this quote from Stillness Flowing is from Ajahn Chah, and it's talking about the time when he was wandering by himself on Tudong in the forests in Thailand, and collecting alms as he would go to a village. And he was being very austere, and he wouldn't ask for anything, which is appropriate for us all, not to ask for things, but to wait for things to appear for us in the way of requisites. And he said, they offered me a bowl, but it was cracked and it had no lid. This was at a monastery he visited, and his bowl had a number of holes in it and was cracked. And then they offered him another bowl, but it was cracked and it didn't have a lid. Then I remembered once as a child taking the water buffaloes out to graze and seeing other lads carving vines and weaving them into hats. So I asked for some rattan. I mean, that was probably something that didn't cost anything that he could ask for. I wove a disc and a rectangle and then joined them. I had my bowl lid. The only thing was it looked like a sticky rice basket. On alms round, it was a real eyesore. The villagers referred to me as the big bowl monk. I just dismissed it. I tried again. I worked day and night on it. It was the wrong kind of effort, fired by craving. At nighttime, I would light a torch and work alone in the forest, weaving the strips backwards and forwards. I knocked against the end of the torch and drippings from it scalded my hand. I still have the scar today. I came to my senses. What am I doing? I'm thinking about this in the wrong way. I've become a monk, and now I'm going without sleep just to get robes and a bowl. This is the wrong sort of effort. I put down the work. I sat and thought things through, and then I practiced some walking meditation. But as I walked back and forth, my mind returned to the bowl lid, and I went back to the work, completely absorbed until just before dawn. I was tired. I took a break and began to meditate. As I sat, the thought came again, this is wrong. I started to drowse a little, and I saw a vision of a huge Buddha. He said, come here, I'm going to give you a Dhamma talk. I went towards him and prostrated. He gave me a discourse about the requisites. He said that they're merely the accessories of the body and mind. I woke with a start, my body shaking. Even now I can still hear the sound of his voice in my ear. I'd learned my lesson. I'd been blinded by desire, but now I stopped. I worked for a reasonable time and then rested, walked, and practiced sitting meditation. This was a really important point. Formerly, whatever work it might be, if it was still unfinished and I put it aside and went to meditate, my mind would still be attached to it. I couldn't shake it off. However much I had tried to lever it out of my mind, it wouldn't budge. So I took this as a mental training, a training in abandonment, in putting down. Whatever I did, I determined not to finish it quickly. After working on the bowl lid for a while, I would go and practice meditation. But whether I was walking or sitting, my mind would be wrapped up in the bowl lid and wouldn't concentrate on anything else. I saw how difficult it is for the mind to let go. It clings so tenaciously. But I gained another principle of contemplation. Don't hurry to get anything finished. Do a little and then put it down. Look at your mind. If it's still going round and round with the unfinished work, then look at how that feels. That's when it starts to be fun. Go to battle. I was determined not to stop until I had trained my mind to the point that when I worked, I just worked. And when I stopped, I would be able to put the work down in my mind. I would make work and rest separate, discrete, so that there would be no suffering. But it was extremely difficult to train in that way. Attachments are difficult to abandon, difficult to put down. The idea I'd had of getting things over and done with as soon as possible wasn't exactly wrong, but from the point of view of Dhamma, it's not correct. Because there's nothing that you can know, excuse me, this is a very important sentence, excuse me. Because there's nothing that you can know once and for all if your mind refuses to stop. There's nothing that you can know once and for all if your mind refuses to stop. I came to reflect on feeling. How can you let go of pleasant and unpleasant feelings when they're still present? It's the same as with the bowl lid. So this was the principle. Don't do anything with the thought of getting it finished. Put it down at regular intervals and go and practice walking meditation. As soon as my mind went back to worrying about the work, I'd tell it off, oppose it. I'd train myself, talk to myself alone in the forest. I just kept fighting. Afterwards, it was less of a burden. As I kept practicing, I found it easier to separate work from rest. After that, whether it was sewing robes or crocheting a bowl cover or whatever I was doing, I trained myself. I could do it, or I could put it down. I got to know the cause of suffering, and that is how Dhamma arises. Subsequently, whether I was standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, I felt a radiance and enjoyment that lasted until finally the bowl lid was finished. But on alms round, the villagers still looked at me and my bowl with baffled expressions. Sometime later, I remembered having once seen a kind of tray in someone's house in Bangkok that would make a reasonable bowl lid. So that's what I did. I got hold of a tray, bent the edges up, soldered them, and used that as my lid. I never thought of asking anything from anyone. So I appreciate the question, how to put the work down or how to get up and take a break. I think many of us, especially in the West or in, cultures where we're really pushed to work hard, and that could be anywhere, not just the West. I hear about young people in various places in the world, really being under so much pressure to work, to excel. And you think about, what are we doing as we um, create habits? How are we training our mind? And so I know for myself, it's often been difficult to put things down, like Ajahn Chah said. And I know that this wasn't necessarily part of of your experience, Grace, of, walking away and still having the whole project in mind. But it's kind of like, even um, you might say the practice or the habit, the discipline to stop and take breaks. It's kind of the beginning of it. But then also, like, really practicing training the mind so that we can think what we want to think when we want to think it. The Buddha talks about that. It's really fascinating. And it's like, do I want to be thinking about this still um, while I'm doing something else? When do I let the mind rest? One time Ajahn Ganha said to me, you have to let the mind rest. Otherwise, it's like an airplane that never stops. Eventually, it runs out of gas and crashes. And so we really, really want to pay attention to, what's the habit behind what we're doing. Is it something like Ajahn Chah said? There wasn't anything wrong with him wanting to hurry to get something done, but it's not really the Dhamma either. Um, can we pick things up, do them with all of our attention, put them down, and rest with our complete attention, or what I want to say, kind of our letting go into resting. I know Ajahn Brahm often says, whatever you do, do it 100%. Your work, your resting, whatever it is. So it's interesting how the training of the mind goes. If the mind isn't doing what the wisdom aspect of our mind knows is best, we need to be patient, but we need to be persistent with training it. In Ajahn Chah's language, of course, is, go to battle, fight it, that kind of way of thinking about it. That isn't necessarily the way that works. I'm not so much, if I go to battle, I feel like I bring up a kind of energy that isn't so helpful. But if I go towards wisdom and kindness, which, is not different from what Ajahn Chah is doing, but his characterization of it for himself, that's what works for him. For me, if I am kind and consistent, really patient, but tenacious, that's what helps. And the tenacity needs to be around, the wisdom of what's really good to do. And it's, it might seem like, well, there's, nothing wrong with working hard, but there is a need for balance. And mainly for the opportunity to really help the mind develop so that it can see and know. That line of, you can't know anything really for sure if the mind doesn't stop. That's pretty interesting. It's like, how do we prepare the mind for insight? We have to help it be able to stop at least long enough for that new understanding to arise. So I like the way Ajahn Chah, like, he was always so incredibly honest with himself. This is really necessary, that we aren't ever letting something just kind of like slip under the rug. But and you know, just because we decide we're going to do it a certain way, and then we see that the mind isn't cooperating, or our habits and our conditioning isn't cooperating with that, to not get discouraged, but to realize, okay, this is going to take a bit more effort. This is going to take a bit more persistence, maybe a bit more care. And then as we gain little bits of ground, sometimes there feels like there's a sliding back, because, oh no, it's happening again. But to just be really patient with that, and not allow the mind to fall into old habits, but to again correct it, again require that it steps up. So I noticed this kind of thing happening when I was doing my 3-month retreat, because there I had the space to really watch my mind. And it's not such a strikingly obvious thing when the mind is going into the territory of being too strict and stern. But then you can feel the tightness. You're not calm, you're not peaceful. You can feel that there's been too much force to try to get the mind to do what I want it to do. And you can tell when you sit down in meditation, that's when you can see the results best. But if the mind is also if I'm too lax, then I can also tell that the mind isn't being guided strongly enough to stay present. And then it's another kind of experience when you sit to meditate. So finding that kind of sweet spot of giving enough attention, enough of a requirement for the mind to shape up to what is being asked of it, but not so much that it's contracting and tight. So I like that idea, maybe there's a set period of time, and we just remind ourselves, okay, now I get up from the work and take a break, and then come back. While I'm taking the break, I'm going to let my mind completely step away and see how that works. Sometimes it's useful to give the mind something else that's attractive to it, a wholesome distraction, if you will. Maybe it's not even really a distraction. Maybe it's a wholesome investigation. Something the mind wants to think about, something that's good and wholesome to think about, leaving the current project to the side. We can actually probably look at all 5 of those methods that the Buddha talked about in removal of distracting thoughts, even though we might not really categorize our work project that's on our mind as a distracting thought. It's still a thought I don't want to think right now. Right now, I want to be at ease, so the mind can get rest, so it doesn't crash later. And so right now, what do I want to do? Do I want to feed it something really delicious? Maybe something about the Dhamma, maybe something about kindness? Or do I want to try to understand and feel the feelings, like Ajahn Chah talked about, being present with how that feels? How does it feel to still be thinking about this thing that at this point, at this time, right now, I don't want to be thinking about? Where's the clinging? I love Ayya Chitananda will just say, where's the clinging? Playing the game, where's the clinging? Her favorite game. Turning it into something fun. I mean, for Ajahn Chah, he's like, then you have fun, you go to battle. It's like, no, that's not fun for me. It has to be kind of set up in a different way for my mind to be enjoying it. And it gets, you go a lot farther, or at least I feel like I make a lot more progress if I'm encouraging the mind to do something wholesome and enjoyable rather than pushing it to the brink of its resistance, you know. And so, yeah, these are just some thoughts about how we can let go to really settle the mind. And it's what I think I would like to encourage most is that we are really kind to ourselves and yet clear, very clear about what we want our mind to be focused on and what we want to turn away from, what's wholesome and unwholesome, or even what's appropriate in this moment or not. And to notice the subtleties of how the mind feels. And then when we're meditating, we can notice that when we're trying to control the situation too much, sometimes focus on our meditation object is too controlled and we're tight, we can't get to that place of being completely relaxed and open. And so we can start to notice, when we notice how things feel, regardless of what happens, when we get more and more sensitive to feeling what's going on in the body, feeling what's going on in the mind, then we have more opportunity to guide that process, helping the mind be happy, free, relaxed, productive. So I'm going to stop there and open it up for discussion. Grace, did I answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Do you think any of that will work?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any experience with putting things down, letting things go, or not putting things down and letting them go?
I just want to say I found that reading and your commentary very helpful. Very helpful. I'm retired now, but mostly in looking past and trying not to have regrets about having dumped so much of myself into work for extended periods of time. So it was just really thought-provoking. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love the Stillness Flowing book. As many of you know, this is the biography of Ajahn Chah and his teachings, written by Ajahn Jayasaro. It's so beautifully written. I really recommend it, and it's available for free distribution. If you're nearby, you can pick a copy up here. If you're not nearby, you can write to abhayagiri.org and ask for, they'll send a copy. Yeah, thank you, Janica. Alex?
Hi, thank you, Ayya. I really appreciated that line that you repeated. I can't remember the exact wording of it now, but it reminded me of something I read in regards to trauma. And I know that's not about productivity, but I think we all have varying degrees of trauma from working under capitalism and needing to be productive. So maybe it's relevant, but generally, it says that when we're in a reactionary state of mind, or we're just acting out of impulse, we're not allowing the openness of the mind to learn something new. We're just caught in that cycle of thought of reacting to something we've previously been traumatized by. So even if it's not a similar situation, if we get caught in that kind of reactionary cycle, we're not allowing ourselves to have the openness of mind and heart to actually see the situation clearly. We're just reacting to it as if it's the same situation we were traumatized by. And so not being aware when you're not watching the reaction, if you're just in it, kind of in the thick of it, it robs us of our ability to learn and to adapt to a different situation. And so maybe if we're just always trying to get things done, that kind of also is robbing us of our ability to actually learn and see clearly the reality. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I mean, it's true when we're not mindful, present with what we're doing, regardless. I mean, then we're not really able to choose what we want to think, what we want to say, and it can be for all kinds of reasons. You know, the conditioning that we have, we automatically react, whether it's out of trauma or just whatever our conditioning is, and that conditioning might have come from lifetimes. It's I think very important not to get upset with ourselves, but to, when we catch ourselves doing, saying, or thinking things that we would really like to improve upon, make more skillful. And wherever we catch it, that's where we've got that chance, okay, now the mindfulness is present. Now I can make a choice. So, like Ajahn Brahm really hesitates to, sometimes sounds like he's saying there is no free will. And I think what he means is that there's so much of our behavior that's just based on our conditioning. Bhikkhu Bodhi will say there's a modicum of free will. So when we really are practicing to be mindful and present, we have more of that agency available to us to do things that are not the automatic reaction. And I also know in my own experience, as I reflect on the way I handle things, that I can think that I'm doing it by choice, but actually, it's something that I've learned over time. And unless we take time to reflect on whether or not we like this approach, we may not really see that it's actually coming out of a long-term conditioning, and that we have the opportunity to change it. And I really have seen that patterns can be changed that we think are just completely calcified in us. Attitudes, views, we can change them. But it's, as the Buddha said, it's not enough really even to see that this other way of thinking would be better. We have to go really deeper and see that our current way is dangerous. And that danger can be the danger of attachment, the danger of selfing, like, the self being reinforced, these kinds of things, to really take a deep look. So there's been a few comments in the chat. I just want to say that Stillness Flowing is also on our website under our teaching menu, and books, and you can download it there as a PDF. or you can download it from a Bayagiri site, I believe, as an EPUB.
It's also on iBooks.
It's on iBooks
For
for
free,
free download. So you can get a copy. And if you have a PDF, I've noticed that I think it's Control Shift F or something. And there's a way you can see what you search for. Is it Command F shows?
Yes, if you have an Apple, it's Command.
Okay, yeah. So I think on a PC it's Control F, something like that, where you can see what you're searching for in context. And I was reading, I'll tell you the page. I was reading from page 95,
Yeah, I think Grace found it.
94.
It's up
Okay,
there,
thank you.
yeah.
All right. Anne?
Yeah, I mean, I was immediately, as you were discussing this, thinking about, oh yeah, the chocolate break. You know, it's like, okay, I'm doing this. I need something else to be doing. Reach for the chocolate, or, you know, some other is to goodie. I mean, it's reflex, it's conditioned, and, you know, I just see it's interesting. So thank you.
You're welcome. You know, sometimes the chocolate break gets us pulled out of the other pattern we have. You can, okay, this little reward is going to get me to, you know, like be more moderate in this other thing I'm doing. But then you have to not turn that into a habit. Patty.
Yeah, thank you for offering another alternative to Ajahn Chah's, what did he say? Go to battle or fight it or something like that. Because, you know, coming from his words, that I'm a person who, when I hear an authority person or someone that I really respect speaking those words, I'm going, right, that's what I've got to do. That's what I need to fight this. Yeah, well, they're not so helpful for me. And so truly the kind approach of recently, I got all twisted up in a situation that it was an opportunity and I didn't know how to make it happen and it wasn't right. And it was over a course of days that was just, well, maybe if I do this, I can do that. But yeah, but then that's going to happen. It was all consuming. And I think it was maybe on day 3. I mean, my body was so tense, so tight, just, you know, when you get your shoulders hunched up around your ears, you know you have a problem. And it was just, the clouds parted, frankly. And I just said, wow, this is really painful. This is dukkha. And to understand kindly that, yeah, it was dukkha. And yes, these things were happening and they were true, but the result was self-inflicted. And I had, you know, another place, I know he said it. I've heard Lampa Pasano say it. I don't know if the Buddha originally said it or if Ajahn Chah originally said it, but it's put the burden down. Yeah. And it was just like, you know, the relief was palpable. And it absolutely ended when I understood simply that it was not, well, simply and profoundly that it was dukkha and there was a path out of it. So I've used that also on a couple of other situations since then. And I find that when I recognize, but of course that's the mindfulness, isn't it? You know, when you see, oh, when the reality is there, then you have choices.
Yeah.
And it was powerful.
Yeah, it's great because, you know, we can understand what someone else is describing, not through the words so much, but we relate to our own experience. We only really know through remembering how it feels, through knowing that feeling for ourselves. And this is, like then the reminder from someone else, like, oh yeah, this is the dukkha, this is the stress, this is the suffering, and what it feels like to put it down.
Yeah.
When we actually see the danger in it, when we actually feel the pain, the discomfort, the suffering. And then, sometimes we hold on because we can't bear what we think will be the result of putting it down, letting it go. Something's going to fall apart.
That's the try harder approach.
It's the try harder approach, and it's the fear of what will happen if I let this fall apart.
Yeah.
But then let the mind go there. What's next? What's really going to happen if I let this fall apart? And a lot of times it opens up to a kind of freedom and an opportunity for something new to come in. So it's like it takes some mindfulness to know that really we're working with a kind of fear. And that's why we can't let go. But what if we really just let it fall apart? And sometimes we're clinging and it's painful because the necessary resources, whatever that might mean, aren't really there to keep this thing going, whatever it is. And then by letting it go, it really does, it disintegrates. I don't know if this is making any sense. You might need a concrete example. I remember when I was attending the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment, and this is basically a place where it was interfaith practice, but it was very much like a kind of traditional church in a lot of ways. There are all these committees. They would always have like coffee and cookies after the service, and the group that was producing coffee and cookies was kind of dwindling. And then they wanted to, it was nobody was going to man the coffee and cookie table and bring the goodies and stuff. And there was this, oh no, we've got to find somebody to like pick this up. And then someone said, what if we just let it go? It's something, it sounds silly in a way, but it's like we're clinging to things to continue in the way that we know it, and then if you just let it fall apart, a lot of times there's no bad consequences really going to come from it. Or even if we think it's bad, the change might open to something that really is going to work. What if I really just let this job go that I've been banging my head against a brick wall to keep going? Or what if I really let this relationship go, even though I've been trying so hard to improve it? Sometimes it's best to put it down. Thank you, Patty. Karen?
So I was really thinking about this in the framework of having, like right action and right intent. If you're grasping onto something, if you think about it in the way that, oh, is this really the right way to be going, right? Like, does this thing that you're clinging to, is this, part of the Dhamma, is it really true, that it is so important? And so having the mindfulness of being able to kind of put that to the test, if you find that it's not sort of aligned with the Dhamma, it would be easier to let it go.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to give yourself space to do that. So I don't know. It's, you know, and it can be moment by moment, decision by decision. You
Mhm.
know, is this the best thing for me to have this cookie? Right? Like, I really want that cookie, and I'm thinking about that cookie all day, you know. Just a simple example.
And not thinking about your blood sugar all day.
And not thinking about your blood sugar or whatever, and just be like, okay, I'm just going to ignore that. But if you just let the cookie go, just let those thoughts, you know, drop them, like, oh yeah, that's not the right thing, and I'm not going to think about this anymore. That's cool. And it applies, like you're saying, you know, it applies to cookies, it applies to relationships. Right? But it applies to everything. Like, if you have the mindfulness to be like, okay, is this the right way?
Mhm.
And then sometimes, if it is the right way, you have to acknowledge, okay, it's the right way, but right now my body is telling me I need rest.
Mhm.
So, and then just singularly focusing on rest, you know, and
Yes.
then coming back to it. So, yeah, it's just that it seems really useful.
I think it's a good point. What that brought up for me is it can be the right thing, but maybe it's not the right time. And that's another aspect to think about. And it may feel like we've gotten kind of ranged pretty far from the original thought of, you know, how do I get up from what I'm doing and take a break? But
Right.
it really is the same kind of thing. And when you're talking about, is this in alignment with Dhamma, that's so important to reflect on with whatever we're doing and saying. But like Ajahn Chah said, what he was doing wasn't really not aligned with Dhamma, but he was looking at the more subtle aspects of his mind. It was that kind of like, I gotta get this done, you know, that wasn't the energy that he wanted to nurture. And so it's like, how are we doing this thing? And I love Ajahn Gunha's like, you know, whatever you're doing, do it as a gift. It's a whole different attitude than what am I going to get out of this, or I'm doing this because this is expected of me, or I want to look good, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, like really, if this is a gift, and I do my best to make it as good as I can within a reason, not as a perfectionist. We're going to get to that topic another time. But doing an appropriate kind of putting this together as a gift, and if it's selfless, it takes on a whole different energy that's so much more healthy and balanced and beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Karen.
I think
Thank
Karen,
you.
she hit it when she said, like, if it's really the right thing, you'll want to do it anyway, naturally. And that's like coming out of wisdom, not clinging. Because I think any clinging is bad. It's like, even if it's right intention, it has the wisdom feeling, not the sticky clinging feeling. So you don't have to worry about it. If it's really coming out of wisdom, like if it's really right intention and right for you and right action, there's not going to be clinging. It's going to be, yeah, I'm doing this out of wisdom. It is the right thing. And you don't have to feel like a cookie is the bad thing if your blood sugar dropped and you actually need the sugar, you know, versus craving cookie. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. And it's kind of like being in the flow. There's a peaceful feeling.
Yeah. It's not the clingy feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, great. Grace put their hand back up. They
Grace.
keep going up and down and up and down. And
Grace,
I feel
tell
like
us about it.
I'm ready, Grace.
Hi, okay. I guess I wanted to say a little bit about this because I've been working with this so hard this week. And I also asked about perfectionism and the root of why I can't step away from things sometimes, or the root of why I beat myself up so much sometimes when I perceive myself to be flawed is related to what Alex was sharing about trauma and growing up in a household where if I made a mistake or if I was resting or if I was uncertain about things, I was treated like I was a stupid idiot. And, you know, I am so grateful for all the things that my parents gave me, and I love them so much. And this was an incorrect way to treat baby Grace. And this week, just really seeing that as the root of so much suffering in my life and seeing that it's so incorrect and being able to picture 8-year-old me or 12-year-old me and just seeing this child and seeing the way this child was spoken to and just seeing so clearly now as an adult that it was just incorrect. It was not right to speak to that child that way and to teach that child that all those things are shameful and wrong, and that that kid was not a stupid idiot. And actually, all those things like imperfectionism, making mistakes, being uncertain, that's just the way things are. And this fear of uncertainty and this fear of not finishing things, like that's a fear of anicca. And actually, if I can put that fear down of anicca, then I can actually just be in the Dhamma and be with the way things actually are. And that's what I've been working with this week.
Beautiful. Thank you, Grace. You know, sometimes we think, well, I had a really good childhood. There's nothing wrong. My parents gave me everything they could and, you know, all that. But actually, you might find some trauma in there. Because, yeah, they didn't mean to be so harsh or they didn't mean to be cruel. They didn't mean, you know, but it comes out of their conditioning, you know, and it's important to acknowledge what's really going on in us. As adults, we get to kind of reorganize what's in here. We get to reshape it and understand it. I'm watching Neil. Exactly, you know, and it's okay. It's okay. Parents make mistakes. I know, because I am one. And it's such a complicated thing to be a parent. There are 1,000 decisions every week. It's hard, and you're not going to make all the right choices all the time. Every parent knows this, I'm sure. And it's okay. And it's wonderful when your child realizes the trauma that they've had and they're overcoming it, they're seeing through it, they're letting it go. It's like, oh, good. Because most of us aren't really trying to mess up our kids. Yeah, that's great, Grace. Thank you. Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks. This is a beautiful conversation. Grace, that honesty is just a wonderful gift. Thank you. And what you just said about clinging is helping me so much. And it's all this stuff, it's like digesting it. So my question is about practice and culture, the cultural overlay. And it just seems like, for me, I like the aperture idea. Like we can open it, kind of soften, and then close it, kind of, I'll use the word tighten or focus. Maybe that's more appropriate, focus. So I'm just curious, because I don't want to sound racist, but I've done a retreat in Burma, and it seems like it's much more focused. So then is the question about clinging, I don't want to make that practice wrong, because I just find that sometimes, yeah, I love what y'all was saying about conditioning too. And I remember that even though there was a lot of conditioning and trying, in capitalism, there was also helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's two-sided. It's like what Grace said about her parents, it's like two-sided.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say about, because I'm going on retreat now for a long time, and I want to notice how I can soften, but then if I also do like a retreat with a teacher that's a little bit more focused, how does one balance all that?
Well, one important part of it is really being aware of the results. When you follow, it's not to criticize the technique that is being used, but when you follow that technique, what does it do to your mind? Sometimes we need to soften around it. Like the way we pick it up comes from the way we've been conditioned. Someone else might pick it up a little bit differently. And we really hear about this quite a lot from the Westerners who went to live with Ajahn Chah, because Ajahn Chah would give these, like really strong, like admonishments to the whole community, and be kind of the way it would be described from where I come from as ranting and raving, and the Thai monks, most of the monks came from farming village in the countryside, super laid back guys. And they liked it. They found it inspiring and encouraging and invigorating. But the Westerners, how, and they're like getting traumatized by it, they're like, that's not the approach. And Ajahn Chah sounds like he was a master at making that shift to try to like help people work with things that would really help them come into balance. So I would say, if you're in a situation where you're with a certain kind of teacher, try to do what they're recommending, but be very, very aware of the effect on your own mind, and see if there's an element there that needs to be introduced for you, that you bring to it, that helps you to be able to become still and calm and happy. You can do that by focusing in, or you can do that by opening the aperture, feeling the whole body, feeling the PT flood the body, and just see what works for you. And you don't have to criticize or get into a discussion about it. You can just know that for your mind and your conditioning, you need to kind of bring in something a little different. And that's okay. The Buddha gave a lot of different approaches because we're different. And we find ourselves in different places as we go through our life, and we need different things sometimes. So that's what I would recommend. Thank you, Suzanne. Neil?
Yeah, so as you were talking, and as other people have been talking, and I've been like, things pop into my mind as sort of examples, like tasks that need to be done, or projects that I've started. Excuse me. And I kept thinking, oh, okay, so this habit I have of procrastination can be justified by this process of being able to put things down. And so for a while I was patting myself on the back, but then thinking, no, I think this is a whole different thing. maybe there's something healthy in it. I'm sorry, now I got some dust in my throat. Excuse me. But so I kind of let that go, but I guess I wanted to bring it up just as sort of maybe as a cautionary thing that there could be a danger. I mean, I'm not talking about a major danger, but there could be a danger as well in what we've been talking about. So I just thought I'd put that out there if you wanted to say anything about that.
Yes, don't be lazy. Laziness really is a danger. Because you know what? We're gonna die. I just saw my cousin in the coffin, and I saw my other cousins, and oh my God, they look old.
So
like, don't look in the mirror,
you're gonna take this right to the opposite extreme. Okay, great, thank you.
Well, we need both ends of it, I mean, like, don't waste your time. And what do we want to put our time into? Like, no matter how old we are, we don't know how much time we have left. And then, observing, like, is it helping me to procrastinate? I kind of doubt that. and whatever our habits are, it's healthy to try to change those for the better, instead of just following what we've been doing all along. Oh yeah, if they're really good habits, we know to really be pleased with that. But yeah, it is important to hold the spectrum of options available and notice what's possible in this moment. We have choices, more choices than we think we have at any point in time. And to really, we're so fortunate to have all these different teachings available to us, different teachers with different temperaments, different approaches that they have found valuable. And we have to actually bring more wisdom to bear than if we only had one teacher ever and we just follow that. But we've also got more opportunity to really make good use of this time we have. So I really appreciate bringing in that side of it. Thank you, Neil. Crack the whip.
Yeah. But when you said is it healthy, this procrastination? I've thought about this a lot, and I think sometimes it seems like it is, because I know when I pick something, there are certain things that I pick up to do that I know are going to frustrate me because I don't really know how to do them properly. And so sometimes I need to, okay, I'm not in the right place for this yet. I'm not in the right place for this yet.
Yes.
So there is a little bit of that, but it can still become a danger. If you just keep waiting for there to be a time and a place for it, then you're really just avoiding dealing with some of this conditioning that that makes you frustrated about this particular task. So it's tricky anyway.
And it's great because it gives us a chance to really use our discernment and look at our intentions and notice what's important. And I've had this kind of situation quite a number of times where there's something I'm supposed to do and I just keep putting it off. And then there's a point where it's the right time and I can get it done really easily. And it's like the timing has to be right. And it may not even be immediately apparent that that's actually, things haven't lined up yet. And Ajahn Brahm talks about the mind being ready to meditate. And I really noticed that when I was on retreat, because I had all this freedom and flexibility that if I sit down to meditate and my mind is racing and I really give it a good go and it won't settle down, then it's clear that I need to do something else. Maybe it's walking meditation. Maybe I just need to take a walk in the forest. If I sit down to meditate and I'm just immediately falling asleep, I know I need to take a rest. But that's not necessarily true every time anybody's having that. Sometimes it's avoidance. We got to really look. But then after I rest, I sit down to meditate. I'm calm, I'm still, I'm going into the depths. And then I know it was the right time. My mind was ready to meditate. So it's tricky, like you said, it's tricky. We have to be really good detectives and understand like what's really going on with us. We don't want to miss opportunities and have the mind go lazy and slack, but we want to give it rest and openness and relaxation when it's appropriate. Take some skill.
Yeah, and thanks for that reminder, because it was in the reading where Ajahn Chah said, sometimes put it down and do some walking meditation. And I think I made a mental note of that, and then of course already forgot it until you just said it now, that for me, I think in these kinds of instances would be really helpful to just, if it gets frustrating or whatever, just get up, take a little walk, come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about feeling sleepy too, sometimes, some kind of tiredness or sleepiness comes and then you work your way through it and it goes away and you're fine. Sometimes you can't work your way through it. You rest and then you're fine. And it's something we have to learn about ourselves, noticing the subtleties. Yeah. Thank you, Neil. Linda?
Yeah. Well, I could identify with a lot of what was said, both as far as projects that I want to get done, and then also just some sort of problem or that I'm mulling over in my mind. And what I've found is that eventually I will get to that point of being able to step away and look at what's happening. And if it is really got me worked up to see the suffering in it. But I'm often discouraged at how long that takes to get to that place. And I'm wondering, what I can do to shorten the time that it takes for me to see clearly.
Well, I think patience is important. So maybe it's being patient and, letting it take time. Or maybe it's noticing where you might fight it and not fight it, but care for it. Maybe there's something there that can be different, because a lot of times it's our clinging and our resistance in the wrong way that keeps the thing going longer than it needs to keep going. It's hard because it really, you might need to go one direction or the other direction in order to help it come to a completion more easily. So it's going to be, like, try things, like what really seems to be helpful to the mind. If I'm really like noticing how much they're grasping there is, seeing if you can let go of that. I don't know, is this helping at all?
Well, I think the problem is that it's like there's just so much intensity that I don't see anything else, and it's almost, it has to get really uncomfortable for me before I will take that broader look.
Yeah, so you can practice taking the broader look earlier. Noticing the intensity before it gets really, really strong. Start to notice how it feels in the body when there's something that feels like it needs to be attended to. And you can feel the intensity maybe earlier in the process and take the broader look. And just, it's a new habit to create of trying to see different sides of situations or a broader perspective, maybe earlier in the process. One of my cousins back in Indiana said something to me that I felt it was basically trying to get me to be Christian again. It was something like that. And at first I'm like, oh, this is so disrespectful. I mean, like, I'm a minister in my own religion, what are you thinking? But it didn't take me too long before I just was like, yeah, she didn't mean any harm. She's just trying to save my soul. She doesn't know there's no soul. Okay, whatever, just let it go, and it gets easier the more we go down that track. And so maybe there's something there to, instead of continuing to think, ugh, I was able to kind of turn it around pretty fast. And really, it's really a trial and trial kind of thing. It's like, see how it goes. And sometimes it's helpful to talk about it with an outside person if you want to get in touch, and sometime when things don't feel self-conscious about talking about something that doesn't seem that traumatic, it's okay, because maybe it's an opportunity for developing a new approach.
I wonder if you can enlist Greg too, Linda. Like if Greg is a good one to notice when you're getting wrapped up around something. And,
that's
and he can be
helpful.
like, hey, Linda, are you getting wrapped up in something? And a nice way to help, if you don't have the mindfulness around it, maybe he can help remind you about it. I know it really helps to have Ayya Santussikā remind me of stuff. Like, you're getting obsessive. I was like, oh, okay.
She tells me when I'm getting grumpy.
Mama, you're getting grumpy.
I knew a couple that she was a meditator and he wasn't, but he'd say, have you meditated today?
That would just annoy me, and I would be like,
fortunately, she took it as she appreciated it. Yeah.
I don't know. I think Cynthia, did you want to squeeze something in there?
Yeah, it's okay.
Cynthia and Lynn, maybe, I don't know.
Well, it might be too big of a topic. I was just something came up from what Grace was saying about that struck me about there's been a lot of stuff going on lately, like really, really difficult things just coming out of the blue over and over and over, to where I feel like almost traumatized about like the ground being completely dropped out from under me. And I know that's like the teaching. I mean, that's, but how, so my short question is, how does one get comfortable with impermanence, with the reality of it, instead of just feeling traumatized? So anyway, that might be way too big of a thing to try to take on in over time already.
It's a beautiful question, and the short answer is read the highest blessing sutta over and over again.
Okay.
That last paragraph of, and every place for them is safe.
Okay.
That's where you go.
Thank you. I will do that.
Yeah. And it's amazing sometimes how we get there, but all of the components there lead to that complete peace, regardless of what the heck is falling apart, everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then you don't need ground under you.
Thank you.
Maybe that's a good, different Saturday topic.
I know.
A whole topic. A big one, as Cynthia is saying. It's a big one.
You're going to remember that, right?
No. Cynthia will remember it and tell us later.
I will
To
remind
retreat.
you. The next
Okay.
Saturday I'm going to be available and you can talk about it.
Okay. It goes very well with Grace's topic.
Yeah.
How to walk on a floor of emptiness.
Oh.
Ooh, that's the title.
Neil has the title already. It's great.
Anybody else want to say anything? I know we're a little bit over time, but it's all right. We started a little bit late.
Hi, Ayya. It's Alex. I just found the page of my notebook where I had more about what I was talking about in the beginning. If anybody is interested, I just sent a snapshot to Grace, but I will be happy to share it if anybody would like more information about our unconscious conditioning. You know,
Sure. Why don't you stick it in the chat to everybody, and then people can
cool.
take a picture of it or something if they want to.
Can do. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome, Alex. And yes, we will be in retreat for this next Wednesday and Saturday and the following Wednesday. We come out of retreat on Friday, a week from Friday, and then Saturday, the 27th, we'll be doing a day long. But the community will be meeting, so if you want to come together and listen to some Dhamma together and discuss it, I really encourage that. A lot of times, you know, when the cat's away, the mice will play and they have a lot more fun, and that actually created a whole group that's been meeting for a couple of years, so you might really find that valuable. Come on in, Simona. We're just finishing up. It's okay. So
This is a different place. Yeah.
I want to thank you all, and I hope you have a good couple weeks without us around.